Back in 2012, the World Bank teamed up with China's own Development Research Center and released something pretty incredible. It wasn't just another report, it was a bold, detailed roadmap for where China should head over the next 2 decades. So let's dive into that vision for China 2030.
To really get where China's going, you first have to appreciate just how far and how fast it has come. For 30 years, China pulled off an average annual growth of nearly 10%. I mean, just look at this chart. It's not just a little higher, it absolutely dwarfs everyone else. This was a speed of change the modern world had literally never seen before.
And this is so much more than just numbers on a page. We're talking about an economic engine that lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. It completely redrew the map of the global economy and really set the stage for a new era of prosperity.
But here's the thing. The very people who wrote the China 2030 report asked a really tough, really important question. They realized that the exact same model that created all that success was starting to run out of steam. For the next part of the journey, China was going to need a whole new game plan.
And that brings China to this, well, you could call it a fork in the road. It's a critical challenge that a lot of fast-growing countries run into. It's that tricky moment after all the easy wins from industrialization are already in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, economists have a name for this. They call it the middle income trap. It's where a country gets stuck in limbo. It's become too expensive to compete on cheap labor anymore, but it hasn't quite figured out how to compete with advanced economies on high-tech innovation. A lot of countries get stuck here and just stagnate. So a huge part of this report is figuring out how China can leap right over that trap.
The old model? It was an absolute powerhouse, no doubt. But it left behind some serious imbalances. It was way too reliant on huge state-led investments and just exporting everything. And that came with costs, It held back the services sector, created massive environmental headaches, and the gap between the rich and poor got wider. The big takeaway here is that these aren't just small problems to fix. They're actually signs that the entire growth engine needs a fundamental upgrade.
And that's exactly what this report lays out. We're not talking about a few small tweaks or a minor course correction. This is a whole new blueprint for China's next chapter. So let's get into how it plans to build a totally new foundation for growth.
The whole strategy really comes down to 3 big interconnected ideas. The first one, foster innovation. Number 2, go green. And number 3, expand opportunity for everybody. These are the key pillars, so let's unpack them, starting with innovation.
So, that first pillar, innovation. The shift that the report calls for is massive. The idea is to move away from a system where the state is directing all the investment into a few strategic sectors to one where the private sector takes the lead, and fair competition can spark creativity everywhere. It's a shift from a closed system of just absorbing foreign tech to an open one that's plugged into global R&D, creating real, commercially successful innovations right at home.
Now let's move on to that second pillar, which is honestly just as revolutionary. It's all about going green. But the key here is to see environmental protection not as a cost, but as one of the main drivers for the next wave of economic growth.
And the need for this is, well, it's urgent. The report found that the cost of environmental damage and using up resources was getting close to a whopping 10% of China's GDP. Dealing with this isn't just about saving the planet, it's an absolute economic necessity.
But here's the really optimistic part. The report argues that China is actually in a fantastic position to lead a global green revolution. Why? Because it has a huge domestic market to test and scale up new tech super fast. It has a high investment rate to build new green infrastructure. It has a dynamic private sector that's ready to jump on new opportunities, and it already has a strong R&D foundation. These are some serious advantages.
And that brings us to the final pillar, expanding opportunity. This is all about building a more inclusive society where everyone shares in the prosperity. But what's really fascinating is that the report says these internal changes will also completely reshape China's role in the world, making it a more balanced and sustainable global partner.
And you can see that massive structural shift in these numbers right here. The projections show this dramatic rebalancing act. The economy is meant to go from being dominated by investment and heavy industry to being driven by people, by consumers, and by a massive services sector. That's what a mature, high-income economy looks like.
So how do you get there? Well, you invest in your people. This third pillar is all about making sure everyone has a fair shot at good jobs and quality services like education and healthcare. It means fixing Social Security, reforming that old household registration system, the hukou, to let people move more freely. The big goal here is to create a strong domestic market of consumers, which makes growth way more inclusive and stable for the long run.
So, when you put all these pieces together, the push for innovation, the drive to go green, and the goal of shared prosperity, what kind of future does this roadmap actually paint for China by the year 2030? What's the end game?
The report's own words really say it best. The vision is to build a modern, harmonious, and creative high-income society. It's an ambition that's not just about hitting some economic target. It's about a whole new quality of growth and a higher standard of living for everyone. So, the China 2030 report lays out this incredibly detailed, incredibly ambitious blueprint. The path forward seems clearly mapped out. But the final lingering question isn't really about the vision itself. It's about the journey and whether this grand design for China's next great leap can truly be realized.